our behind the scenes interview and discussion of our winter musical, which is Cyrano. And Cyrano is going to perform right here on this Facebook feed tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday night at 7 p.m. But before we see those performances, we wanted to take a minute and just tell you a little bit about this. Always complicated, and doing it in a period of time where there are rules about how we can be together and what places we can be and how we're allowed to act when we're together is really complicated. And so there were all kinds of challenges and all kinds of exciting things that we had to try and we got to do for the first time. And so here today with us we have live via audio only from the cast, Charlie Reiser, and two other cast members, Kat Jewett and Shamarke Abdi. And then we have the assistant director, stage manager, Svetlana Green. And we have the director, Miss Dudley Voigt. And so the group of us are here today, and we're just going to talk a little bit about the process, and then you will hopefully be able to join us tomorrow and Saturday night and hear more about the show. So let's start with you, Miss Dudley. Why Cyrano?
I have wanted to direct Cyrano in a high school for a really, really long time, and the timing's never been right. And most of the Edison community knows that my sweet spot at Edison is the musical, and there is a musical version of Cyrano. But because Cyrano is a man of words, you know, the original play is what I really was drawn to, and so. Part of the adventure of doing theater in these times during a pandemic has been to really focus on what is possible. I don't think it does any of us any good to focus on what we can't do. And so I started thinking about ways we could use a text that was in the public domain and play with that, with all the things we sort of were getting better at doing over platforms like Zoom, and I landed on Cyrano because I love it and I've always wanted to do it. And you know, it's a love story, and it's a really profound, I think, meditation on like a kind of pure love, which is not about being loved back, but sort of what you do to protect someone even and never really receive love back from them in the way you might have hoped. So that's why we chose the text. And then from there, we wanted to have some fun and experiment with what was possible musically. So I keep saying it's in the style of Moulin Rouge. And I'm really thinking about the Baz Luhrmann movie that's, gosh, 20 years old, and how revolutionary it was to watch that style of filmmaking draw on popular music and songs we know as sort of a replacement for dialogue, which is really different than musical theater, which often characters stop and emote and just sing because they're really emotional, or because we need a dance number. And so that's where we started. So that was why Cyrano, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
Which is a director, like, if you don't love the text and the show itself, like, you're really in trouble. So I'm grateful that I get to have that freedom to pick that latitude.
So Edison has done Zoom plays. We did one in the spring, and we did one in the fall, and I've seen other theater companies do theater on Zoom before. There's been a lot of theater on Zoom in the last year. In what ways has this project tested the limits of what theater on Zoom is?
That's for me, right?
That one's for you too, and then we'll open it up to everybody else. Like, what I mean, we could have just like done a play on Zoom, and we did something a little bit different than that. So can you talk us through like what that reasoning was, and you know, why you sort of chose to direct it the way that you directed it, and why this process is different than just doing a play on Zoom?
Yeah. Well, first of all, digital platforms are really challenging for music. And I know that new technology is coming out, but it's, you know, multiple audio sources really are problematic, right? Like, Max, if you and I started talking at the same time, everyone knows ourselves, because we've all had that, and so we knew we would record the music separately. Hello, Lucas. And oh, Lucas, I'm gonna have mute. Thank you. Great.
We know the audio on Facebook works now. That's good.
Yeah. So anyway, as I guess it felt like if the weather changed, there were some successful outdoor summer theater experiences last summer that I was envious of and paying attention to. And knowing that the singing and the music would all be pre-recorded and a separate piece, it started to be really appealing to think about. There are 5 acts in Cyrano, and several of them take place outdoors. So it started feeling like, gosh, if we could do that outdoors, that would be advantageous. And then the weather, we had that cold snap, and then it started warming up, and then, we heard we were going to be coming back to school, and it just seemed possible, and certainly not less work to create a show in multiple modes: pre-recorded and mixed audio, pre-recorded and edited choreography and video pieces, and then Zoom recorded acting, and then live filmed acting. That is a complex scenario, but we were really deliberate as we, the cast and crew, discussed how those techniques might elevate those moments and help us tell those parts of the story. So it wasn't random. We were really deliberate about where we thought Zoom was helping us tell a story in a more interior and intimate setting, and where being outside and in person helped us be bigger. And we even, we were able to have a few people there watching and reacting and helping us be bigger in our outdoor performances. So, I mean, it was largely opportunistic, and I think the students can speak to how we came to that wish, that hope, that reality, and sort of it was a progression throughout the process of if that would help, if it was possible, if we felt comfortable, if it served the show. This is me moving down my imaginary continuum towards that.
Yeah, great. If you're just joining us, welcome. This is the behind-the-scenes interview of our production of Cyrano with Thomas Edison High School Theater. My name is Max Athorn. I'm the Artistic Director of Thomas Edison High School Theater. You're here with members of the cast and crew who we introduced at the beginning, except for we now welcome Lucas Nutterloh, who just joined us as well. So I'm going to turn our attention to members of the cast and crew that are on the call and just say, what are your perspectives on this adventure that you were just on, and that Dudley was just talking about? Like when you're thinking back of the process of Cyrano, what will you remember?
I can go first. For those who don't know, Cyrano is both outdoors and filmed on Zoom, and then we kind of we edited everything together into one formative production. And I think that the constant nervousness of if it's going to happen, or will the weather stay up, or will things get done, or will we find this online, can we do this, that kind of sticks with you. It kind of stuck with me through the beginning of the project till now, and I still am a little oh, is it going to get done, yada yada yada, right? And so but it's a good nervousness. It's I'm happy to be, this is what I'm stressed about, rather than stressed about other things, right? So I think that just perspective of oh, is it going to happen, who knows, is kind of fun. And yeah.
Well, and having not really much of a playbook for a lot of the things that you're doing, right? You can't rely on the way that we did this last show with almost any of this at all. Kat, Charlie, Sharmarke, Lucas, any of the rest of you have a perception? Yeah, Lucas, go ahead, buddy.
I can go next. Yeah, I think what I will remember the most is the student involvement. Throughout the first 4 3 to 4 weeks of the rehearsals, the entire time we were all just looking through the script and cutting, stuff that did not need to be there, because it's a very long play. It's like if we performed it over Zoom, like the entirety of it, it'd be like 4 hours or 5 hours. So we had to cut like 50% of the entire play, and so that was a lot of student involvement. So it was nice to get our perspective, our voices in there. That's something that I would definitely remember. Also, the abstractness of it, in Zoom, but also outside. It's definitely very different, but in a good way. We'll see.
Sure, Mark, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I have like it's about Cyrano. So like I loved being involved into this production. When I first heard there's a musical going on called Cyrano, and then I was thinking, I gave it some thought. I was like, it's not like, I feel like it's not like me to skip a musical. It's not like me to skip a Dudley production. So so I decided to audition for Cyrano, and I love being part of it, and I love playing the characters I did, and getting a great.
Great. Thank you, Shamarke. Kat or Charlie, do you have anything to add at this point?
It was definitely different. I really enjoyed it, though. It was really different from any usual play or musical that I've ever been in. And to be honest, I didn't even know I was going to do it. I was thinking about not doing it. But then I was like, let's try it out. Let's do it. And I'm really glad I did. I really enjoyed being a part of this. And we definitely had so many funny moments over Zoom. Like, some of the green screens weren't working, and one person's face, like their whole body and face was the green screen, and the green screen just wasn't working. And that was hilarious. And just sharing those funny moments that we couldn't have done in person, that's something I will remember for a while.
That's great. Charlie, do you have the last word on that question?
Yeah. Something I really like when we worked outside. It was like a whole new setting. I really like the idea of like doing environmental settings. It really add more to what we were doing, more than just like a stage and props. And I thought that was really cool. And I also enjoyed kind of like improvising on the spot along the way, just in general behind the scenes. Like, oh God, with my computer and all, there was like problems with like having green screen stuff in the background. So I know I had to move my whole desk to an entire wall just so it moves to the green screen, and it worked out fine, and I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. I'm curious from all of you, there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that we talk about a little bit. The first is just the music, right? So how did this music get chosen? Who wrote the music, or did we write the music, or did somebody else write? Talk about the process, because this play was not originally written to be a musical, and then it was made into a musical, but we're not doing any of the music that's in that musical. So how did this become your musical? Talk about that process a little bit.
Should I start?
Sure.
That help? Because I would like to start with some failures that I don't think the cast knows. But back in the fall, originally I thought that I would cut the script couldn't do it by myself. I work with my collaborators, my students, my cast, or my collaborators, and I really couldn't move forward on it. And that actually was a really important moment because it helped me realize what the show was going to be, which it was going to be a process we went through together and not just a rehearsal and a performance. And I think that has maintained that's been the primary thing that we've focused on, that we've talked about, right, is we've talked about process, and that we collectively have influenced and designed the process. So I came to auditions with no idea what the music would be, other than I knew I wanted it to be popular music. You all will remember we sent out a survey to the school, and a few teachers and a few students replied robustly. I was just looking for like popular music to get a sense of what people's tastes were in the Edison community. And I learned a lot. There were a lot of songs and artists I'd never heard of. And then most of it really happened by identifying moments in the script with the cast and then taking that to the adults, where we kind of riffed within a super list that the cast had generated of artists they liked, right? We did a whole thing on favorite artists or favorite songs, and you all can take it from there.
To talk a little bit more about like the actual making of the songs, there were like 3 or 4 websites that were used. There was like a lot of like trial and error on what could like work and what could not work, for especially like putting all the like music and like putting all the voices and the singing together. Ultimately we figured it out, but there was also just a lot of like songs that just like got cut, or there were songs that like we were like, oh, maybe that could work, and then like later on we were like, no, not really. And like I had access to these like spreadsheets, and there were like songs in there that I had like we didn't even look at twice, that we were just like, okay, no, originally this is going to be more of a like, I almost thought it was going to be a very like almost only music kind of thing, just from like the sheer amount of songs that like we had on our lists. It's not that, obviously, but but I think the songs that we chose, like Love Like This and When We Were Young, those songs are very like good, and they really do bring the character development that's needed in those scenes in a much more creative way, in a much more collaborative way. Great. Than if we were to just like act out the scenes as written.
Lucas, can you tell us a little bit about the process in the IB music class and sort of what the relationship was between the work that you did in rehearsal and the work that was done in class?
Yeah, so there are 3 students in IB Music Year 2. Obviously, Oliver and I, we were both in the production itself, but Ivan, the third one, he helped a lot with the composition of these, and also the Year 1, Miss Stacy and her Year 1 IBSL Music students, their big project essentially was writing the overture and helping with the composition of these, the background to us singing. And so there was a big class effort, because it's a big class too. It's not like Year 2. Year 2 is only 3 students, but Year 1 is like 10 or something like that. But yeah, and I know that Mr. Athor, I know that Miss Stacy kind of spearheaded a lot of the soundtrap. That was one of the websites that we used. She spearheaded a lot of those projects for us too, which is really nice.
Yeah, the electronic music part. Great.
I wonder if Kat could talk a little bit about some of the songs. We actually took text from the script and turned that into lyrics, and some songs are performed as written with very minimal changes. And Kat, you worked really hard on the lyrics for the Moon Man song, which was a real challenge. I mean, right, taking Cyrano's giant lines. Can you talk a little bit about that? I wasn't even in the process.
Yeah, so we have this one song called The Moon Man, and it's basically explaining Oliver is trying to distract me in some way. So he's explaining 6 different ways that he'd get to the moon. And so we took his text and we turned them into lyrics. And it was very difficult trying to find rhymes and things that could fit. Like we put in the word icosahedron, and we fit that into the song. And we had a laugh with Miss Dudley when we were doing that one. And it was such a fun process to get to do that.
Great. Well, look, we've spoken for 20 minutes, and I think that we've done enough to get people hopefully really excited to see this show tomorrow and Saturday at 7 p.m. right here on this Facebook page. There'll be another live event that says Thomas Edison High School Theater presents Cyrano. I want to ask one more question on our way out, and you can just choose to answer or not. Any of you, what are you going to be looking for when you're watching it tomorrow? Like, what is the thing that you're sort of curious about as an audience member to see, because you never rehearsed it beginning to end exactly, right? Like you did it in such pieces. Now you're going to watch the whole thing. What's the thing that you're excited to see, Lucas Netterloh?
Yeah, the thing that I would be most excited to see is, the different camera angles that Tech worked with, because I know they had 3 cameras set up, or 4, 3 or 4, I forget. But it's going to be interesting seeing it filmed, but not from one singular camera that just panned from one side of the stage to the other. I assume there will be cuts to a different camera or something, and I'm definitely going to be excited for that.
Great.
I'm excited. Miss Dudley, throughout the whole filming, she was talking about block placement, and I didn't know what she was talking about because we couldn't see the block placement. So I'm excited to see what that looks like.
What does that mean?
In Zoom, in Zoom, the blocking plate where the
tile placement,
where your squares are on the screen. Yeah, cool. I'm excited to see that too, because you're right. When you're filming it or whatever, you're not really conscious of that as it's happening.
Yeah, and so she just had to describe where our tiles were, and sweet. I'm just excited to see everyone's reaction and how that is.
Great, really good. Any other parting shots before we go for the evening?
Yeah, I know. I'm curious to see just how, in general, the Zoom scenes are gonna look, because I know we've tried it out in the spring play, but I've never seen exactly how it looks with just that static angle, and I'm curious how well we all handle that.
Great, me too. All right, you all, thank you very much for joining us. One more time for the audience at home, thank you for being with us tonight. This has been the behind the scenes of Cyrano with the cast and crew of Thomas Edison High School Theater's production of Cyrano. We hope that you will come back to this page tomorrow, Friday, or Saturday at 7 p.m., where you'll be able to sort of watch it live along with other Facebook Live audience members, and then afterwards we'll keep the video up for a while on Facebook after that as well, so that you can check in. So thank you very much for joining us. Have a great evening.
Bye. Thank you.